Most of the time, you see a great athlete, it's in the arena, on the field, on the court, in the cage, in the ring. And when you see that, you think that that's that person, that's that athlete, that's who he is. You think that that's the champion right there. But what a lot of people don't realize, and most fail to understand, is that what you see when that person performs is just the smallest tip of the iceberg of who they truly are and what they've had to go through and what they constantly go through to have reached the position that they're in, and more importantly, to maintain the position that they're in. So it's, for example, it's like when I fought as a professional athlete, one of the most important things for me for mixed martial art fighting, Muay Thai, kickboxing, was my home life. The life outside the arena, life outside the cage. What I did out there had more of an influence on whether I would win fights and how far my career would go. And most people would have no idea of this. They wouldn't know. I got some great fans. They watch me fight. They love me. They love what they see me do. And they love some of the tricks that I pulled. I've done things that no fighters today yet have been able to do, to mimic and repeat. But what they don't understand is what I went through to be able to execute something like that under the pressure that we're under. And that's what truly makes me who I am. It's just like when we see the champion. We see the champion. He comes out or she comes out, and we just want to touch him. We want to yell at him. We want them to acknowledge us, and we just want them to know that we know how great they are. Hey, hey, hey. And when they look over, we think that's them under the lights in that arena, but it's not. It's all the stuff they did to make it there, and all the things they do to be able to stay there that makes them who they are. So it's very important. That's why I want to have a talk. And this is going to be a long one with you about resilience and about mental toughness and about the things that I had to do outside of the arena and outside of being a good fighter that had far more impact on my success than just being able to perform as an athlete, perform physically, and even have the talent and skill of an athlete who can supersede everybody who's around him. So the first thing we gotta understand is when I started off fighting, it's important of how we choose our craft. When I chose my craft, and I chose mixed martial arts competition fighting, one of the most brutal combat sport that exists in the world. I mean, it's crazy, and there's other great brutal ones too, but this one is just it's insane. But the first thing I said is I had to define why I wanted to do it. I said, Jermaine, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to fight MMA? Why do you want to fight Muay Thai? And I was honest with myself. I made sure I wasn't doing it because my friends wanted me to do it, or because I saw some movie and I thought I was going to be the superstar like this guy in this movie. I defined why. And once I discovered why I wanted to do it, and I realized that it was a good reason and it was worth it, then I started moving forward. Then the first thing, researched all the pros and the cons of the game, of the fight game. What can happen to me? Injuries, how far can I possibly go? How low can I possibly end? So I wanted to know everything that could possibly happen, and make sure I was willing to accept all of those things. Then I researched all the angles of employment affiliated to succeed, because it's just like being a rapper. We can all want to be a rapper, and there's 100 million rappers a year that come out, and only one of them makes it. So just because I wanted to be a fighter doesn't mean I was going to make it. I may have been the greatest fighter in the world, but I just didn't have the connections, or I got injured. So I looked at everything else that surrounded the employment of the craft that I was interested in, the martial arts, being an instructor, having my own school, instructing at someone else's school, teaching people self-defense, training security teams, being a personal bodyguard. So I checked around all these things. And the next thing I made sure that it was always something that I would do for free. And when I say that I would do for free, I always say, I never allowed myself to be bought. There was never anything that I would do for money that I wouldn't do for free. So I made sure that if I was going to be an MMA fighter or kickboxer, I would do this for free someday if I needed to. And it was something that I could continue to do. I could even stay in it, even if my career failed, even if I didn't make it in the professional, in the glory, in the limelight, as the top fighter of the world. I could still maintain a career in this, because it was something that had to be so important to me that I was willing to lose everything that I had now, because I wanted to make sure that I'm going to get out there and this is something that I want, and I could possibly lose everything right now that I have while trying to achieve this goal. And last but not least, I had to make sure that it was something that I was better at than most. You know, it doesn't do us any good to just want to, like I say, everybody wants to be champion, but nobody wants to work like a champion. Nobody wants to go through the pains and the pressures that the champion has to go through. Nobody wants the struggles and the stresses of the champion. They just want the acknowledgement. So I made sure that this was something that I was good at, that I had talent at, that I could learn fast. The next thing I had to stay on that was very important for my mental toughness was commitment. This is one of the biggest things that makes us all fail. And my first form of commitment was I structured my home life, my job, my friends, my associates around my training and competition. If the job got in the way of training, if it got in the way of sleep, if it got in the way of anything, it got out the way. I made sure that my friends, associates, girlfriends that I dated supported what I believed, you know, allowed me, kept the house quiet when I needed it quiet, treated me the way that I wanted to be treated when I was preparing for a fight. And if they didn't agree with that, that was fine. We didn't have to be together. But that's the first thing I did, was make sure that everything around me complimented, helping me to get to my goal. Even my job. I got a job at a moving company. And the main reason I wanted a job at the moving company because I wanted to work out for 8 hours a day, moving stuff, lifting stuff. And so when I got out there on that box truck and it was time to go, I would be running, moving furniture, sweating like a dog. Everybody on the moving company looking at me like, what the heck's wrong with you? This guy's crazy. He's a nut. Why are you working so hard? I said, because this is my workout too. This is a part of my training. So I was cheating my job by getting the workout out of my job and getting paid to do it. So I always made sure that everything I did complimented me so I could stay committed. You know, becoming a bodyguard, I became a professional bodyguard and a bouncer. They gave me an opportunity to use my skills in real life situations and to offer my skills to help protect real people from real life and death type situations. I also made sure when committed that I never ever spoke of my intentions. I was always quiet. I always allowed my actions to announce what I was going to do. I can remember when I joined Ron Smith's Muay Thai Academy, I had already had in mind that I was going to be taking it to the top. I was going to be fighting. This is what I was going to do. And I was working the heavy bag, and I had not told him yet. We had just kind of met, and he came over to me and said, "You planning on fighting, aren't you?" And I looked at him. I said, "Well, how you figure that?" He said, "I can tell by the way you're hitting that bag. You're planning on really doing something like being a pro." I just said, "Yes, I sure am." So I always never try to sell someone else my dream or make somebody believe in what I was going to claim that I was going to be or what I was going to do, because you never know, you may not make it. And the worst thing we can always do is break our word. So I always kept my word solid, but the commitment was within me. And distractions were always around. You know, there was all kinds of distractions, you know, women, you know, friends, you know, just parties, all kinds of things that could throw you off your game. And what I did was for distractions was number one, I would always admit to the power of the distraction. If there was something that was distracting me, I wouldn't try to ignore it or pretend like it didn't exist. I would admit that it did, and I would admit that the power that it had over me. But then I blamed myself for falling prey to that. So I always took the blame myself. I never blamed anything or anyone else. And if there was something that I couldn't beat, which I'd had a lot of times in my life, and that distracted me and pulled me off my game and, you know, almost got me in situations where it almost cost me my life, I would actually pray for it and pray over it and pray to the higher power to take it away from me. And I would say, I'm weak here. I can't control this. I have no abilities here. I need you to step in and take care of it for me. And I have to give a testimonial here. And I'm not a person, if you know me, to try and push any of my beliefs on anyone, because I believe we all will find our own, and none of us, you know, I'm no better than you are, and nothing's speaking to me or offering me anything any more than it is you. But every time I have prayed and asked for something to be taken away, it got taken away in such a way that there was no way that I could deny that there was a power there that made sure that was protecting me whenever I asked for that protection. So that helped me to stay committed. Another thing is I kept trusted supporters and friends around who kept me in check. You know, I listened to my friends, and I kept smart people. I kept successful people. I didn't hang around with a bunch of losers and people who weren't going anywhere with their life, and they just wanted to ride on my coattail. So I kept people who were smarter than me, people who were more successful than me. You know, just although I kept them around me, and when they spoke to me, I listened because I was young. You know, when my fight career first started, and I had fun. I was no different than anybody out there. I loved hanging out. I loved partying. I loved the ladies. And I can remember one time I was at a party, and it was my party, a hotel party, and it was a wild night, and I was laying in the back in the bed, hanging out. We had girls everywhere, fellas hanging out, DJ throwing, just having a good time. And my brother called me on the phone. When he called me on the phone, I answered the phone, and he said, "What are you doing?" And one thing I never did with my supporters and friends and close people, I never ever lied to them. Even if I was doing something wrong, I never lied to them. I always made sure they knew the truth about me. And I told my brother, man, just hanging out with some ladies and the fellas and stuff. And my brother told me, he said, "You know what? You need to stop right now because you have not completed your mission. And you sitting there acting like you successful and you have not succeeded." And I hung up the phone, shut down the party, went to bed, got up the next morning and trained. So me being committed, I made sure I kept people around me to help me stay committed that had my best interest in mind. One of the biggest things for competitors and performers, fighters, anybody in the world is confidence. Confidence is the most powerful emotion that we can own, an emotion that we can have, and it is also the first thing that gets attacked by those who are in competition with us, or are trying to beat us, or are just jealous of us. They attack it fast. So, and there are no classes on how to build confidence. You don't go to school and learn that. That's something that they figure you pick up just through their education system. But I made sure my confidence stayed high, because once your confidence gets hit and it starts to get taken down by people, then you lose everything. And here are some of the things I did. Number one, I always believed in myself. I believed in myself, especially when others didn't. If everybody was talking against me and saying what I couldn't do, that's when I really kicked in and became Jermaine's best friend and believed in myself. I always focused on my weaknesses and heightened my strengths. If I had a weakness, I found it before anybody else did, and I strengthened it. I focused it and turned it into a strength. All right, and then anything that I had that was a strength, I just made that sucker so strong. One thing I was really strong with was just pure brute power and strength and weightlifting. So I made sure that I could lift and I could power clean what a power lifter could. So when I was in that fight, if I got my hands on that guy and I wanted to lift him and throw him across the cage or the ring, I could do it. So I found all my strengths, all the things, my round kicks were so powerful. They could hit you so hard, break somebody's leg in one kick. So I added speed to them. And then I toughened my shins. I kicked trees to make sure my shins were so tough that it didn't matter what I hit. So now I had this weapon. It was like a baseball bat when I went inside. So I always made sure that my weaknesses and my strengths were always focused on. There would be no surprises on either one of those to me. I always surrounded myself with supporters. I stayed away from haters, people who spoke negative, and some people don't like what I was doing. That was okay. I wasn't upset with them, but I wasn't going to hang around them and let them try to convince me of their ways either. So I kept supporters around me, and one of the main things I did to keep my confidence peaked was I pushed myself as hard as possible in training, and I always learned everything that I could. And I would push myself to the point of what I called overkill. And overkill is I overtrained, I did more than I was supposed to, more than I should have needed to have to use to win in competition. And that helped me to keep my confidence high, because when I faced off with my opponent, I could always say, I know I've done more than I have to. So there's nothing for me to fear. Either he's the better man tonight or I am. Another thing I did that is I understood this is the main people who attack your confidence are haters. All right. And a lot of people take haters wrong because they try to define the hater's intent. And a lot of times you don't know a hater's intent. A lot of times the hater may just be jealous of you. They may admire you and not know how to say it. They may, believe in you and feel that you're failing them. So there's so many reasons that a hater could actually be on you. So I understood, appreciated, and even listened to my haters. That was one thing I really, really did, was I would go and look online and see what haters were saying, because a lot of times they were right. They were helping me for free. So I would put my haters to work for me and say, man, this is great. I'm loving that these haters are like that. So I never, of course, I was always ready to protect myself, defend myself from them, but I didn't allow them space in my life where they could have any kind of control over my confidence and what I thought about myself, because I know what their intent was, what they wanted to do. It'd be stupid for me to allow them that position. So they didn't have that position. You know, another thing that I did to help keep my confidence up was I always assured that I could do things that others couldn't and wouldn't do. You know, even as a fighter, I could do backflips with no hands. I can flip off stairs. You know, I had all kinds of things that I could do and that I was willing to do. And a lot of times, some of the things I did were dangerous and even stupid. And I'm going to tell you about one of them. Do not do this. This is one of the stupidest things I ever did. But I wanted to really push my fear. And so I went and I pulled my car over and stood in the middle of traffic with my eyes closed. And cars zoomed past me and honked their horns. And, you know, thank God. I mean, he must have been watching over me at that moment. I didn't get hit or hurt, you know, but it was for me. And it was one of the most scary moments of my life. But I calmed myself down. And that right there carried with me a long ways through my life, because it one of the main things it showed me to help me with my confidence is it showed me I could trust how far I was always willing to go. When I faced off with my opponent or anything that when I always knew in my mind, I'll go further than he will. I'll go further than they will, because I'm willing to go all the way, and I'm willing to put myself at risk that other people want. So I'm not suggesting that to you. Please don't do what I did. I'm an individual. I'm just telling you some things that's, you know, but there's just some of the things I did to keep my confidence up. You can do something similar to that without putting your life in danger. Okay. All right. I always maintained a strong spiritual relationship and sensibility that stood above everything else. That really, really helped my confidence, because I always felt that I was on a mission, and not just a mission of self-serving myself. And that's why I made sure when I chose my craft, I didn't choose something that was just self-serving and just going to make me money or give me a big house. I made sure that it was something that I could use to help people, to better others, and to better myself. So I always had that thought in my mind and that belief that I was on a spiritual journey. So regardless of what was going on and what may not have been going my way, or what mishaps or misfortunes may happen with my job or my career or my goal that I'm trying to reach, it didn't really matter, because this was a full, whole lifetime journey that I was on. So that helped me to maintain my confidence at the highest peak whenever I felt like life, you know, my body or my mind wasn't going right, and I wasn't getting the most out of it that I thought I should. One of the most important things, especially if you're going to be an athlete or a performer, anything of that sort, is you got to be coachable. And so many athletes out there are talented and have great skill, but they're not coachable. The main thing I made sure I was that I was coachable, and it was kind of easy, because as a martial artist, you respect your trainer. You hold them in the highest honor, like you would hold towards your father, your mother, because you look at them as someone anointed by God to guide you in your life. So that helped me. It made it really easy, because this was the martial arts. So I wasn't just going there just to be a fighter. I didn't call my trainer coach, you know. And matter of fact, I called him Ron, because that's what he'd rather be called. But I sometimes try to call him Crew Ron or Master Ron. He didn't like that, so we stuck with Ron. But I never looked at him as just a teacher, like people look at their school teacher, somebody who's going to get you through the third grade, and you're never going to talk to him again. I made sure I was very, very coachable. I always listened and obeyed with humbleness. I never made my instructors feel uncomfortable or corrected, or for correcting or disciplining me. That's one of the main things a lot of athletes do. You can't ever do that. You can't make your coach, you can't make your trainer feel uncomfortable or hesitant in putting your butt in check. You have to have the guts and have the heart and the intelligence to make them feel comfortable at all times correcting you, even if they may be wrong. They should never have to hesitate, because if they feel hesitant, they're going to hesitate, and then no coach is going to deal with that. They're just going to say, you know what, screw it, you're on your own. Since you got it, since you're so tough and you don't want to hear what I have to say. So I always made sure that no matter what he said, I never spoke back. I never even argued, even if I disagreed, unless he asked me what I thought or what I felt. I listened to what he said. I put him as number one in my life. I spent more time with my trainer and my instructors. You know, I befriended their families. I protected them. I was willing to protect them with my life, I went to their homes and we ate dinners. I took them out to lunch at work. I would pick them up from work and take them to lunch. The people at their jobs knew me. I allowed them to show me off. I was a physical, phenomenon, and I was the champion. I was a world class competitor. This was something they could be proud of. So I tried to show up at places where they had friends and family, so they could say, "Hey, look at what I did." And I always wanted to make sure that with them, I always awarded my instructors. It doesn't have to be always something big. Holidays I gave gifts, cards, a phone call always. If I wasn't around for holidays, birthdays, gave them presents. Sometimes it would be something expensive. I gave one of my instructor, Ron Smith, my favorite sword one day. And then other times it was just a card. So you can choose, but always make sure that he knew that I cared deeply for him. And the main thing was, the importance with being coachable is humbleness and humility. That's the key. You have to have a deep shame towards disappointing your trainer. I always had a shame, and I remember it was only once that Ron ever had to say something to me. I was hitting pads and I was being lazy because I just didn't want to be there that day. And Ron put the pads down and he looked at me and said, "Hey man, don't waste my time." That's all he ever had to say to me. And I almost cried, because I felt that I was breaking this man's heart who had put so much into me. So when you're dealing with your coach, you have to be humble and you have to have humility. You can't be arrogant. You can't think that you're better than them. You can't think that the team needs you. You can't think you're God's greatest gift, because you're not coachable. And if you're not coachable, you can't get better. So we always had to make sure that, I was coachable. That was really important to me. And I was so humble that I was willing to fail while following my trainer's orders. And that's a lot of things you see. You see a lot of people, they're quick to betray their trainer. They're quick to leave and go somewhere else. And usually people like that, you never see them get locked in with anybody solid, and you would probably never see them become a true champion, a real champion, where it's well known, and you never see them become a star, because what happens is not the trainer, it's them, and they're giving up too fast. With my trainers, I listened to what they said, and I tried it. We were experimenting. They weren't God, they weren't perfect. I may go in there and try to do what they said do, and it don't work. I get caught. I lose that fight because of it. Then we go back to the gym and we look at it and we fix it. We work around it. But I always had loyalty to my instructors, that if I came to them and I trusted them for day one, I was going to trust them up to the very, very end. I always made sure my instructors knew that, and that's what they could hold pride in, was that Jermaine was always going to be loyal and dedicated to them. And I always gave massive credit. Any chance, you get dealing with coaches, your instructors, whoever, I always give credit. And in newspapers, on social network, I always talked good about my instructor. It got to the point sometimes where you have to pull me aside and say, "Man, shut up. Quit complimenting me so much. I don't want to hear all that." I said, "Yes, sir." And I would stop, if you didn't want to hear it. So being coachable was really, really important. That was one of the main things that I made sure that I was. I kept that at the front of everything. I made sure, did everything I could to not to disappoint my trainer, not to inconvenience my trainer, and to try to give him a good life, give them all a good life where they could be proud of me as a person and as an athlete. Now, a lot of people, we all, let's say just about all of us grew up, with a role model, somebody we like. Like my role models were, when I was a kid, Bruce Lee, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Chuck Norris, and I liked them because of the movies. Hollywood did a great job of making them look like superheroes. And this is the main thing. When you choose someone as a role model, and when I chose them as role models, I chose what I saw about them on TV. I didn't know how old Bruce Lee was. I didn't know where Chuck Norris lived. I didn't know, Jean-Claude Van Damme's what country he was from, because I didn't care. What I cared about was their performance. So that's all that I ever got into. I didn't run around trying to get into these people's lives and find out how many kids they have, and then when they do something bad, my heart's broken and I'm upset because this human being made some big mistake who I thought didn't make mistakes, because I didn't know them. I didn't know Bruce Lee. I didn't know Jean-Claude. I didn't know Chuck Norris. So I couldn't like them as a person. I liked their performance. I liked what they did. I liked how they made me feel. And it helped me. And I even realized and recognized one day, as I started fighting, a lot of things that Bruce Lee, his code of honor, the way he was towards his teachers, that rubbed off on me. Chuck Norris's sidekick, that rubbed off on me. Jean-Claude, being his flexibility. I could sit in the splits. I could jump down in splits. I could jump up and do split kicks. But that's because I watched Jean-Claude sit on those chairs. And I did it while I was a little kid. So I took the good from my role models and I used it. But if they ever did anything wrong or something happened in the future that was bad, I never turned that against them. I never turned against them because I didn't know them anyway. So they couldn't disappoint me. So when you pick a role model, pick somebody that you like, somebody that you want to be your role model, not that somebody else picks for you, and make sure that you admire them correctly. Don't place expectations on them that you can't even place on yourself. We all make mistakes. We all do dumb crap every now and then, and most of it doesn't get found out. So just because they've got cameras, up the crack of their butt everywhere they go, and they make a mistake, and every paparazzi makes millions of dollars off exposing it, that doesn't make them a less person than we are. As an athlete, a performer, working towards being a celebrity, a public figure, it was very important to me to have personal character etiquette, a character that could be impressive and that could be respected. I always kept myself well groomed. I was always very respectable to anybody I met, and I kept myself approachable, which was hard for me because I had the MMA, Muay Thai, tongue pose, shaved side head, muscle bound. I got that natural frown on my brow, so, and the big forehead sticking out. So a lot of people were afraid of me just because of what I looked like. I had that movie star bad guy fighter look, which worked great for my fight career. So it was hard for people to approach me sometimes. So I had to soften myself a lot and allow people to feel comfortable when they approached me. I always kept myself open-minded. I was never closed-minded. I never, and I stayed non-judgmental. I didn't try to speak against people because of their beliefs, because they differed from me. If somebody asked me something, I offered my opinion, but I never put people down because of what they believed and what they thought, or how they were, or who they were, unless they were doing something that was harming somebody else. But that was one of my main things. I always try to be non-judgmental. Another part of my personal character etiquette is I had this thing where I never apologized. I didn't believe in saying I'm sorry, because you listen to what I'm saying when I say this. I'm sorry. I'm calling myself sorry. I'm calling myself pathetic. It's like saying I'm pathetic. So I never liked that. And I also said this too. It's too easy to say I'm sorry. People say I'm sorry all the time, and then if you don't accept their apology, they get mad at you and go tell everybody you're the bad guy when they just did something bad to you. So I said, if I do you wrong, I'm never going to apologize to you. I'm going to fix it ×2. So whatever I did wrong when I made a mistake to you, I was going to come back and fix it double, where you were glad that I made that mistake. And so that kept me in a position where I never had to say I'm sorry. And that person that I did a wrong to, they made the judgment. When I came back and fixed it and offered them the repair or my redemption, said, here you go, does this redeem what I did? And if they weren't excited, oh my goodness, wow, yes it does, then I kept bringing until it got to the point where they said, dude, stop it. Okay. I never ever did for money what I wouldn't do for free. That was always, my greatest, strongest rule. I never allowed money to move me. Money, of course, we needed money to work for and do things, but I never did something that I wouldn't do for it. I was always honest, regardless of reward or punishment. I never allowed anyone to have the power of intimidation over me, by trying to convince me to say something or do something that I wouldn't say or do because of their threat of punishment if I didn't, or because of their offer of reward if I did. So no matter what, I always stayed honest. I never changed my truth just to gain something or to keep him or to escape punishment. I believed in respect. Respect was something I believed there was a power to control people, a power to of communication. And so I never ever demanded respect. You hear a lot of people say, I demand my respect. You can't demand respect, you only demand fear. I always earned my respect. And I always try to earn it from everybody that I met. I did, and I didn't go out of my way to earn it. But if we were together, we were doing something together, we were around each other, we participated in something, I always gave them so much respect, and I just did what I was supposed to do, and I was truthful. Where if they're a respectable person, then my respect would be earned. If I didn't earn respect from them, a lot of times it's because they didn't know what respect was, or they weren't a respectable person. I never tried to force it or push it on anyone. It was just, if you're a respectable individual, and you'll see what you need to see in me, you'll learn it. If not, no biggie. I always make sure that I never belittle others, especially those who are weaker or less fortunate than me. And we all joan and clown and act silly sometimes, but as we become adults, it got out of hand. So I made sure that, no matter who it was, I always made sure that when they were around me, they felt equal to me. If a kid was in a wheelchair and he rode by me, I spoke to him and talked to him like I would talk to anybody else. If a police officer pulled me over, I talked to him just like I talk to my friends. If I walk by past a homeless person and they spoke to me, I would speak to them and, hey, what's happening, man? What do you need? And I talked to them with respect, even if I wasn't going to give them money or give them what they wanted. But I always treated people the best that I could to try to do my best to never belittle anybody. The main thing I did to keep my personal character etiquette was I had a strict code of honor, a strict code that I followed. A code it came from the code of Bushido was part of it. The Native American code had a lot to do with it. So just strict code, and a lot to do with it from the martial arts world. And I followed that code no matter what. I didn't profess it to people. I didn't claim it to people because they didn't matter. All that mattered was me following it. And that code was so strict that even my child couldn't force me to break that code. And I always kept myself strict like that, and that helped me to keep a good, strong character. Now, everybody has misfortunes. This is something, being able to bounce back from misfortunes and being able to look past your misfortunes, that can be something that's hard for everybody. And we always feel like, why me? I developed this opposite theory. Why not me? Is what I would always say whenever something bad would happen. Why not me? It happens to other people. Who am I so special that I should dare to say, why me? So misfortunes always occur. I remember my first MMA fight, submission fight, and 2 weeks before the fight, I was running, sprinting against my dog, racing. I'm smoking it, and I ripped both of my hamstring muscles. Now, there was no doctors back then for me to go see. I had no money. I had no insurance. I had nothing. So all I did was ice and heating pad, and it was horrible. But I healed myself up. I didn't call in and say I couldn't make the fight. I couldn't do the fight. I said, Jermaine, you did this to yourself. That's too bad. You're gonna have to heal it, and you're gonna have to go and fight and do what you said you were gonna do. And I end up winning that fight. Speaking of other misfortunes, both of my nostrils have always been swollen almost shut, so I don't breathe like a normal person. It's hard for me to breathe in my nose. I always had to breathe through my mouth. So I didn't get a lot of oxygen, not the proper way. Less cold air hitting my lungs. So it always made me tired in the fight game. It was hard, I couldn't get in the shape that others could get in. I couldn't go out there and run 15 miles a day. I could only run 3 because I'd run out of air and I started queasing and I started getting dizzy. So that was a misfortune of mine, but I learned how to work around it. And what I did was I started to train myself to control my breathing and to control the way that I fought and to control my opponent so I wouldn't have to get so tired. And then if I did get really tired, I had go-to techniques that I would use at that moment that would more than likely shut my opponent down and give me the chance that I need or put me in a control position where it gave me time to regain my breathing. Now also another misfortune, one of my ankles, I had surgery on when I was 16 years old. It had, screws in and staples, pins. It was really, really a bad because most of the time I couldn't run outside on concrete because that ankle would start acting up. There was even times in fights where my foot was shut down and I couldn't stand on it. So I developed a stance for when that foot was shut down and a way to use that leg to kick with. Because if I couldn't stand on it, then I'm here with it, or I would take the person to the ground. But I figured out a way to work around that misfortune. And so that was just something that we always have to make sure we're ready for. Misfortunes are always going to come. We can't let a misfortune tear us down, or we're just waiting for our life to get torn down. We might as well stop trying to build it right now. Stop trying to succeed now, because something bad is going to come. So Another thing that we had back when I was fighting, it was all the fight leagues. You know, they would pop up and disappear, pop up and disappear. Not because of anything bad about the fight leagues, but what was happening was everything was new. There wasn't the money for it, the funding. A lot of the fighting that we did was banned a lot of places. So, you know, I'd get on a card, I'd become the champion, I'd be the man, and the next thing you know, the fight league was gone. And so there was my career. That's like your company shutting down tomorrow morning. You know, and you're saying, okay, where am I going to work? And then you got to go out there and look for more. So, you know, that was something that, you know, back then there were no sponsors. There was no training funding. I had to pay for my own training. I had no insurance. I had received no medical attention. Whenever I got hurt in a fight or in training, I was my own doctor. So there was all these things, all these misfortunes that could have gave me a reason to quit and give up and say, hey man, it's a good reason to stop. You know, it's okay to quit. But I never allowed misfortunes to bring me down. I even told myself, I'm not going to give up because of a misfortune. I don't care what it is. That misfortune is just going to have to walk with me through this. And I always kept in mind when it came to my misfortunes that there was always somebody out there doing way worse than I was. And there were tons of people who would trade lives with me at that moment. And if they had my life, they would be happy. They'd be the happiest person in the world. So I always kept it in the back of my head and to make sure I didn't insult them, those who had it worse than I did, by complaining about my life and not doing the best that I could and getting out there and pushing my potential to its fullest. One of the greatest mishaps that I had and misfortunes was when Brian Madden passed away. He was my promoter, he was my manager. He was one of the first guys to start Ultimate Fighting. You know, along with the UFC, the SFC was the name of the organization, and I was his superstar. I was his guy. He was building me up, and he ended up passing away at a young age, you know, just out of sight. We don't even know exactly how. And right when it happened, I had no show to fight on. I had nobody to manage me, nobody to promote me. He was one of the only people around who actually understood how to do it and who was connected. He was a special individual. That was his skill, his trait. And when he passed away, I was lost, you know, until I sat back and decided and said, hey, you know, your life is not Brian's responsibility, Jermaine. You got to get out there and figure this out on your own. And I stepped up and made the moves I needed to make. And next thing you know, I was fighting UFC, fighting everywhere, doing it all. It was all good, no problem at all. Training is always the crop of the pot, the icing on the cake, you know, for the athlete. What we do in training, it becomes our life, and everything that we do in our life reflects off of our training, or has to complement our training. How much sleep I get has to I have to get enough sleep for the training that I did. I have to eat the right foods and get enough food for the training that I did. So training was important, but you can easily get training burnouts, and that's what a lot of people get. You get just where you don't want to do it. I just don't want to be there. And with ways I fought against that, first of all, I knew that I didn't expect training to be fun. Even though it was fun most of the time for me, I looked at it like, hey, this is just like the laborers, those guys out there who dig holes and they don't like their job. You don't see them crying and whining, so what gives you the right to cry and whine? So shut up and just do it. So I made sure I respected that this was my occupation, and it wasn't a game. It didn't always have to be fun. Another way I kept from getting burned out is I always kept good music. I picked songs. I had theme songs that I trained to and worked out to, songs that could pump me up, songs that make me feel emotional, whatever it was. I always had something that kept me moving. I always kept up to date on my music. I always make sure it was something new. There were some songs that were so powerful that I could put it on and I could run at top speed until that song ended. And I mean, I wouldn't even be breathing during the run, but the song was so inspiring that I could do that. So I made sure I always stayed up with that. You know, I kept workout partners. Workout partners help to keep you motivated. If they're good workout partners, I made sure I did that. I taught martial art classes that I could train in, and cardio kickboxing classes, things like that. You know, you always go to cardio kickboxing, you always have some cute ladies come in, so that's always a little exciting to keep you making sure that you're working out, doing what you're supposed to do. Plus, it's a good workout. Sometimes I wasn't much into supplements, and you know, definitely not in the pre-workout back then, any of that kind of stuff. But what I would do sometimes is I would award myself a cup of coffee, because coffee to me was like speed. And I'd take that cup of coffee and I would say, hey Jermaine, you work out all this week on Friday when you go for your run, you get to drink a cup of coffee first. And that was just the most exciting thing I could do, I always changed up my workouts. I changed what I did, changed what kind of workouts I did, changed the time of the day, changed the place. It was always good to change things. And changing things, changing my clothes, changing what I worked out in, that always helped keep from getting burnt out also. And one of the main things I really enjoyed doing was I would fantasize while I trained. I would pretend that I was in a movie. I would pretend that I was chasing zombies, or zombies were chasing me. I pretend that I was in war and I was with a bunch of muscle-bound other men just like me, and we were marching in or running in and get ready to go in, and we were fighting this giant dragon or something. I would take my head away from the boredom just so I could make sure my body performed and kept myself excited. I would also use the power of my emotion. I would find things that made me sad, find things that made me angry, find things that made me extremely happy. And that would always push good juices in through the brain and release endorphins, adrenaline, all kinds of things that helped me to make it through that workout and not even realize at the end of it that I was actually bored the whole time. Fear is the most powerful emotion on the planet. Fear makes people decide where they will live, where they will work, who they will talk to, how they will dress, what kind of weapons they will have. It makes most of humans' decisions these days is made off of their fears, what they're afraid of first. And sadly, a lot of times fear holds people back. They won't take a chance. They won't go after something that they could have done or could have won, or if they hadn't been afraid, because they were afraid, they didn't want to take a chance of something happening, so they didn't even try. But fear was one of my favorite emotions and one of my greatest topics. First, my fear control. Number one, I didn't fear fear. I knew that it was okay to be afraid if I ever felt it, and I didn't have it. The way I felt had nothing to do with whether I would be able to perform. All I had to do was calm myself, and I could still think and I could still respond the same way. So the first thing I did was make sure that fear, I call it befriending fear. I made sure fear was my friend. I respected it. I loved it. I understood that it was there for a purpose and a reason. If something happened where my life was in danger, fear would heighten my senses. It would heighten my power and my strength. It's almost superhuman power strength. So I could defend myself. I could run faster. I could take more pain. I would be stronger. So I understood fear. When it came to my opponents and fighting, I didn't fear my opponents. I've always looked at my opponents. I viewed and admired my opponents as warriors. They were cut from the same cloth as me. They were my brothers. So there was no fear towards them. I actually loved my opponents. I cared for them. They were the same thing that I was. And we were there to compete and find out who was best that night. So there wasn't any fear against going against another man. I always kept myself also to keep my fear. It's probably something that kept it so strongly under control, like I said, where I never really ever even felt any kind of fear, was I always had a pre-fight ritual of prayer and calming myself. My pre-fight ritual, I would say my prayers, I would meditate, I would use visualization meditation, I would see myself winning, see myself losing. I would drink tea calmly and just calm myself and envision everything that was going to happen, so there were no surprises. I walked myself through the competition over and over and over from all kinds of different angles, all kinds of things. And the main thing is, I always made sure that I told myself that I was the star and this was my show, this was my place, this was my thing. I thought about many times of people that I knew, and basketball teams, football teams, fighters, whoever, players, athletes, performers, and they would lose something. It didn't change my view of that performer or that athlete. I still liked them. I still thought they were incredible. So I always remind myself, Jermaine, even if you lose, people are still going to think you're incredible, and you still are, no matter. So that helped me to erase fear totally away when I was thinking of competition or thinking of having to get out there. One of the other things that was really strong to help me was my shame of cowardice, witnessed by dead warriors and soldiers. I never ever wanted the warriors who had to fight for real and die, the soldiers who had to get shot for real and die, to ever look at me from the spirit world and say, why is this guy afraid to go in there and fight somebody when there's a referee, there's rules, there's all this stuff. So I always had that shame of cowardice. I never ever wanted them to look down and look and say, wow, why is he being a coward? He has no idea of what I had to go through. Even though myself, I have been through life and death situations in bodyguarding and also just in the streets. So I do understand that. But when it came to athletic competition, combative competition, I never wanted to allow myself to shame the true warriors and soldiers who had passed in combat. Another thing that helped me, my fear control, was my training, my overkill training. I punished myself in training more than my opponent ever could in a fight. There was nothing that my opponent could do to me in a fight. I'm talking from punching me in the face to my shins, breaking a rib, I made sure I punished myself and accepted so much pain that there was nothing that a human being could do to me that would ever be worse than what I had done to myself. So I had no fear towards my opponent ever. And mainly the last thing, definitely not the least, was I was a person who accepted the reality of death. People don't like to talk about death. We all go in there, and most people are afraid to even think about it. I had no fear towards it. Accepted that it could come. Someday it's going to come today. And when that day comes, it's going to be right now at this moment. So if it came in the arena, in the ring, that was what was meant for me, that was perfectly fine with me. Death was not a bad thing to me. So when I accepted that allowed me to live. That allowed me to live with no fear, live intelligently, not in a stupid way. One of my ideologies that I followed was I couldn't die a dog's death, from Bushido, Kota Bushido. So I still had to be sensible and honorable in the way that I appreciated my life. Accepting death didn't mean I didn't love and appreciate my life. It just means that I accepted reality. Like I said in the beginning of this video, this voiceover, that one of the most important things that makes that a performer or an athlete who he is happens outside, away from the cameras, outside the arena, away from the performance area. And that was something I was really strict with myself on. It was what you call my civil affairs, dealing with people, everyday people. Number one, I always kept kids first. I made sure that anything I did, I thought about kids' safety. I thought about, what the kids are going to think, how they're going to respond to it. Kids were always first. Secondly, I always kept a gentleman's code with women. You got a lot of, when you get fans out there, you got some women out there who, they want you to sign certain areas, do all kinds of things. They're willing to do this, here, and that, there. Always kept a gentleman's code and never treated them in any kind of bad or disrespectful way. Always, made sure they felt comfortable around me, didn't harass them, didn't suggest myself to them, anything like that. Just always held that really strong gentleman's code. I made sure my language, I didn't cuss, I didn't swear, I didn't try to intimidate with my voice or my tone. I always kept myself pleasant, that I always say where a 10-year-old could be around me or walk up behind me and he wouldn't be stunned, or his grandmother wouldn't be stunned. Another thing, I was always sure to never punish my fans for my loss with a bad attitude. You see a lot of this a lot of times. The fighter loses, and I understand losing. It's an emotional time. It's a hard time. But as a warrior and a respectable, a combatant and an athlete, we're supposed to have the self-control to control our emotions at that moment. So I always make sure if I lost and got my butt kicked, that wasn't my fans' fault. That wasn't this kid's fault. That wasn't this guy or this little kid who came all the way out to see me tonight and hope he got to see Jermaine Andre and shake his hand. It wasn't his fault that I lost. So I didn't make him pay for that. So even when I lost and got my butt kicked, I went straight to the locker room, cleaned up, and went straight out there to the audience. Walked around, shake hands, just like I did when I won. I never reacted any differently. So I always made sure to keep that way. I always gave fans respectable time no matter what. No matter where I was at or who I was with, what I was doing. If I was in the mall walking with my daughter and a fan, hey man, just Jermaine Andre, hey, I'd to see you with your daughter. I said, that's okay, come on over. How you doing? What's your name? I always made them feel like human beings, because without them, I was nothing. And so I always made sure that I offered my fans, the most respect, time, the most gratitude that I could. One of the most important things that I had to pay attention to with my civil affairs was myself. my aggressive powers as a combative athlete. I was trained to respond violently when shocked, afraid, confused. So that's the training. That's what it puts into us. So I always made sure that I knew that I did not belong in the public. I was an animal. I was dangerous. I was a loaded gun at all times. And if I allowed myself to be set off, when I respond, it would be deadly. So I made sure that I paid attention to where I went. I stayed away from places and people that push buttons and that could try to cause something bad to happen, get me involved in something I shouldn't be involved in, where I have to respond in that way because somebody pushed it. I had made sure that my self-discipline stuff was so strong that a person could spit in my face and it would not bother me. Because I would say to myself, it was, if my daughter slobbered in my face, it wouldn't bother me. So it's just a human being. So I made sure that I had that control before I walked to the streets, because if somebody wanted to set off this world champion cage fighter and make him lose it, all they had to do was come spit in my face. And so I never wanted anybody to have that kind of power over me. No one could set me off. Only I could set me off. So I made sure my mentality was set there, and I always understood that I was the danger. I was the monster. So I couldn't expect people not to act and behave weird towards me. I accepted that, and that helped me to keep my civil affairs really under control, to keep anything bad from happening. Something that no athlete ever wants to experience, no performer is losing. Recovering from loss, recovering from failure it was always hard. I remember when I got knocked out in the UFC, it was, I took the fight on a short notice, and I was winning the whole fight, beating my opponent, dominating, doing very, very well, and then got caught. And when I came home to St. Louis, I was the first fighter from St. Louis to be able to go to the UFC. So everybody knew I was good. They expected me to win, and I expected to win myself. And so to come home and disappoint my hometown, disappoint everything, disappoint my redemption, disappoint my trainer, embarrass my trainer, his friends are laughing at him. That was very, very hard. And it was hard for me to accept. It was so hard that I almost committed suicide over it. And the suicide I was almost committed would have been a ritual harakiri type style that I thought that I was doing, making an honorable move. But luckily, when I was going through these hard times, one of the things I do is I shut my mind up and I listen. And so after experiencing that hard loss like that, and being lost and feeling useless, feeling like I failed everybody who believed in me, I sat quietly and I listened, and a voice told me and said, Jermaine, this is not about everybody else. This is about you. This is about your growth and your life. And this is a loss you have to take so you can get better. And I heard something tell me that. When they told me that, it revitalized me, rejuvenated me. And I said, nobody is ever knocking me out again. And I went through the rest of my fight career and no one ever knocked me out again. So recovering from loss can be hard, because when we lose, it's not a test of our mind as an athlete, especially if you're an athlete who puts your heart and soul into everything. But then you got to go against this other athlete who puts his heart and soul into everything. Somebody got to lose. And when we lose, that's a test of our soul. Not just a test of our brain power or our mental toughness, that's a test of our soul. So, loss recovery, I was always, after that UFC, and I made sure I believed that I didn't have all the answers. So I sought the answer and it came to me. And one of the main things I started learning after that was that I said, as long as I have potential and opportunity, it doesn't matter what losses and mistakes I have behind me. I'm gonna keep moving forward. And I never wasted thought on what I couldn't change. If there was something I couldn't change, I realized, of course, the first days after, some of my losses, things like that, it would break me down, it would depress me, but I couldn't get through the next day, and I couldn't improve or progress because I was allowing that to hold me down. So I made sure to say, if I can't change it, I'm not even thinking about it, and I would forget about it, purge it from my heart. And I always remember that there was always others who suffered way worse than I did. Soldiers, victims, people who've been victims of criminal acts and things like that. Children, born in wheelchairs, born with cancer, crack babies, stuff like that. So all the little losses and failures that I had were nothing because I could recover from them if I didn't act like a little sissy about it. So I always kept that on mind, and I would focus my energy on what I could control. Everything that I could fix. Can I fix this? Can I fix that? What can I control? What can I fix? I would focus my energy 100% on that. And what I couldn't control that was still affecting me, I would say my prayers on. Say, hey, I need you to get this out of the way for me because I'm not strong enough to get rid of it. I can't do anything. And it all would work out for me. And one of the main things that helped me to deal with loss and failure and recovering from it was I never expected anything or felt that I deserved it. I only committed myself. I never felt that I deserved the title tonight. I never felt that, oh man, I expect this good thing to happen because it's supposed to in my life. I never carried that attitude. I always said, I may get it tonight, I may not get it tonight. What's important is that I'm going to prepare the best that I can, and I'm going to go in there and give every single thing that I got, every piece of energy I'm leaving in there. So even if I do lose, I'm going to say that there was no way that I could have won, because I gave it all. So I always kept that at the base of my head and my thinking. So then if a mishap or a loss or a failure did occur, I knew that I had done my best, and I was just going to try to recover from it. That's all I could do. Resilience was my key. My ability to bounce back when bad would happen or misfortunes, things like that. That was my key. I have what I like to call my 3 pillars for resilience that I've used throughout my life ever since I was about 18 years old. And I actually got incarcerated. It was one of the worst things that could happen to a teenage kid. That was the most impactful thing that happened in my life. And I developed this through all these hardships I had to survive and struggle and learn through. And my 3 pillars I call composure, perception, and conduct. And those are the 3 things that I always make sure when something went wrong. Number 1, I maintained my composure. Number 2, I checked my perception. I looked at what had happened, the effect that it had on me, and was it really that bad? Because a lot of times we think things are bad, but something worse could have happened. And if that worst thing had happened, I'd be wishing that what really did happen had happened instead of the worst thing. So I put myself in a position like this. Okay, I'm glad that only this happened and not the worst thing that could have happened. So I always kept my perception operating in that manner. And I always made sure that I kept my perception looking for solutions. The other thing was my conduct, my behavior. I didn't ever allow myself to respond to an occurrence or to respond to someone else. I never allowed them to control the way that I was going to come back or what I was going to do, because of course if I did that, I didn't have time to think, prepare, and plan. So I always make sure my 3 pillars: composure. Whenever something happened, I calmed myself down and maintained composure. My perception, I made sure I looked at it, tried to find all the positive in it instead of looking at all the bad. And then my conduct, I made sure that I didn't respond inappropriately or half off or shoot off or emotionally or anything like that. Another thing that helped me keep resilient was I always had a sworn goal and mannerism that I was passionate about. So I made sure when I was fighting, when I chose fighting, I didn't just choose to fight just because I wanted glory of being a fighter and I wanted to make money. It was because it was something I enjoyed. I wanted to be the best I could so I could teach other people and teach them what was real. So that sense of, that mannerism, that sense of nobility helped me to stand above even being a competitor and worrying about winning or losing a fight, something like that. My passion was in the fact that I wanted to help this meek person who wasn't strong to be able to protect their life. And I always make sure when I made mistakes, I use them as lessons. I never was ashamed of my mistakes. I never hid from them. When I made a mistake, I looked at it, found out what I did wrong, made sure I didn't slip on that same banana peel again, by making the same mistake. And I found what can I take from this to make myself stronger, smarter, better. So mistakes weren't a bad thing to me. The only mistakes were something I didn't learn from. I tried to make sure I learned from them all. And I was never hesitant to ask questions and accept help from strong supporters when and where I needed them. I always had good people around me, and when I needed help, I always had no problem asking. I can remember when I was fighting for the USSBA world title, I was supposed to be in Springfield, Missouri, and my cars broke down. I had no vehicle. So I got on the phone and I called my cousins, and everybody said, and told me, I got this fight coming up. I need a car to use to take down there. And my cousin loaned me a truck, to drive down there, and I drove it all the way down there because I believed in myself. So I had no problem telling somebody else to believe in me when I needed them. And they had no problem doing it. If I really believe I was going to do this, how could I not ask someone else to sacrifice for me to help me reach that goal? Especially all these people you got out there who claim to love you and be your friend and all that kind of stuff. So I always was, I always did that. And like I said, I kept in mind that the greatest thing about the martial arts, martial arts training, the ideology of it, and being an athlete is it kept my life straight. This was, the martial arts was my life discipline. I was as a young kid, I was involved in a lot of things that could have led me down a bad road. And I even went, I started down that path. But the martial arts, even though it was a part of it fed me, it was my career, it was my profession. The martial arts helped me to be courageous all the time and proud to be honest. It gave me something that I had that made me where I didn't feel like I needed something that somebody else had to offer, and that I had to belittle myself to what they wanted me to be so I could get what I wanted from them. The martial arts filled me with this power, this self-knowing power. The martial arts kept me humble. It's one of the main things that, being a fighter, an MMA fighter, and out there and having to beat people down and the way you get treated and when you become a star, the martial arts always helped me, the bowing, the courtesy, to always remain humble and know that the martial arts was greater than I was, and it was a tool that I used to become great. The training always kept me on a good, strong, positive path. It kept me righteous. It helped to steer me from temptation and peer pressure, from laziness and depression. When it came to temptation, I could only go do so much with my friends and with the ladies and hanging out because I had to train in the morning. When it came to peer pressure, I couldn't do that. That's something weak. As a martial artist, I can't do that stupid thing because that's something stupid. I can never be lazy because as a martial artist, that's disrespecting the art. That's disrespecting what I'm supposed to be. And I can never get depressed and feel sorry for myself because as a martial artist, a warrior, it is my job to always stand strong and always see the good in every situation and every person and try to find it and show it to others. I knew I was always supposed to be the leader. I was always supposed to be the strong one that people could look up to and count on. So they helped to keep me straight. It helped to keep me physically healthy, mentally focused and stable. I made sure I ate right because I knew, I present myself as a martial artist. People need to see my body. When they see my body, I need to always be a superior athlete to the everyday person. They need to be able to look at me and say, wow, that's what a martial artist looks like. I need to be able to impress them. So that was the greatest thing about the martial arts and my craft selection. It wasn't just my profession. It was my everyday lifestyle. It was my hobby. It was the way I used to wake up in the morning. It was my etiquette around the house. It was the rules that I used to raise my daughter. The rules of etiquette that we have in my home with the people that I know. It's helped me to make friends who hold the same types of values. It allows me to be around the type of people who have the same types of values as me. And most importantly, having martial arts training, it gave me comfort and inner peace. I don't lay down at night worried about somebody breaking into my house. I'm not afraid of carjackers. I don't worry about someone trying to rob me. And it's not just because I'm saying I can kick their butt, because I can be beat too. But it's because I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid to be hurt. I'm not afraid to die, standing for what's right. So those things don't even bother me. They're not even a thought in my head. They're not a thought in my woman's head. They're not a thought in my daughter's head, because the martial art training that we have and that we do every day prepares us That's what we're doing, is preparing for that moment. That moment when we have to put our life on the line to stand for what we believe in. And nothing can give you more meaning to your life than that feeling right there.
Back up, and he's caught the big hit. Pretty wild move to try on somebody's quick.